Good. This big question about the timing is what happened first, second, where did it go? Originally, did you know that Ezra and Nehemiah were one book? Uh-huh. So when we read Ezra and we got to like between chapter 8 and 9, we inserted Nehemiah, was it 7 or 8? We inserted that Nehemiah passage because it described Ezra talking to the group and doing kind of the revival. Remember that? So they're at the same time. On that chapter, both Ezra and Nehemiah are present. So this throws all the scholars off, like, well then, did one start this time and then later the other came? And so were they building the walls at the same time they were doing the temple? And there seems to have been some overlap. They were definitely in very different roles. Ezra was taking care of the stuff that was going on with the priesthood stuff in the temple and getting it going. And Nehemiah was working on the walls and on the infrastructure around the walls. So we're just going to get through Nehemiah today, and we'll stop for some pretty fun stuff. There's a few things that are kind of fun and interesting. Some of it will be kind of review, and I'll kind of go fast over that because we did talk about it when we were in Ezra. So here's just a reminder in case you haven't been with us. Nehemiah was a cupbearer to, look at the name, Artaxerxes. Because when we do Esther, she's going to be dealing with Xerxes, so no Arta at the front. So Nehemiah was cupbearer to Artaxerxes at the citadel of Susa. Guess where Esther is at? In Susa. So that's where we see this overlapping happening. And having learned in 446 BC that although the temple had been rebuilt and dedicated in 516 BC, and another batch of exiles had returned to Jerusalem with Ezra in 458 BC, the city walls of Jerusalem were still a little more than rubble. Distressed, Nehemiah requests that Artaxerxes send him to Jerusalem to rebuild the city and its walls. Artaxerxes agreed, wished Nehemiah well, funded the project, and sent Nehemiah on his way. Upon arriving in Jerusalem, Nehemiah examined the city's ruined walls in the famous night ride. Remember, we read about the night ride around the city to determine the extent of the damage and what could be done to rebuild. Having recruited support from the leaders and families in Jerusalem, Nehemiah and his extraordinary diverse crew began working on the walls, but not without opposition. Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arab, which we only know is a person by how? What artifact did we see Geshem the Arab on? Octavia remembered this morning. Not a scroll. It was a platter. Do you remember the platter?
Platter, yeah.
There was a platter with the inscription on the edge that had Geshem the Arab as some official. I know, it's a little bit, anything we can remember is good, right? Undeterred, Nehemiah presses on, strategically placing armed guards at the critical points along the walls and dividing the workers into two shifts. That's what we're going to read about today. He ends up having to set up some to keep working on the building while others are guarding, and then they would trade jobs. Hey, do you want to see a little piece of Nehemiah's wall? Well, good luck, because there's not much left of it. This is an overall picture. You can see the Temple Mount up at the top, and you can kind of see the Dome of the Rock area there. And then just below that, you see the step stone structure, large stone structure, and then see the red dot there? There's a little section of Nehemiah's wall right there. It's right on the edge of the Kidron Valley, and it's south of the Temple Mount along the western edge. So the remains are pretty small of what's left, but mainly because they kept building on top of it. Structures kept being built, so they wouldn't, you don't need to knock down the whole wall. You can just kind of smooth it out a little bit and build on top of it, right? There are a lot of layers going on in these ancient areas. Did you see that, Eve, when you were there? Did they say, well, this is the top and down below is something? No, nothing like that. Okay. Nehemiah now introduces us to those who worked on various stretches of the wall. I can see you're very eager to know this, Merlin. There's a bunch of families, craftsmen, tradesmen, Levites, temple servants, district officers, and one man, Shalem, son of Halasheth, a district administrator, who even mobilized his daughters to get to work. The process started counterclockwise. The list begins with those working on the sheep gate, and then at the northeast corner of the city, and then going down around as they go around the city, and it shows each of the gates and where they worked. Would you like to read through all those names? Then you go right ahead. You read through all those names, all you want to. In chapter 3, there's going to be a lot of them. I'm going to give you an example of it, but we're not going to read the whole thing. So you can see the different gates. Now, someone in the first class asked a very good question. Why are the gates named this way? Sheep gate, fish gate, Mishnah gate, valley gate, dung gate? What's dung gate? Okay, what can you guess?
That's what they call the dung.
Dung is where you took the dung out.
Yeah.
What's at the sheep gate? The sheep for the temple service and all of that. What about the fish gate? Fish, people selling fish would be outside that gate. So that's how those gates became known. They would have something that was right outside of it that you would go for business or whatever. You know, I need to get a horse. Well, go to the horse gate and buy a horse down there. You would go out that gate in order to go to those salespeople or whatever. So that's why they were named that way. So we'll read the first couple verses of Nehemiah chapter 3 to get a feel for it. We're not going to read the whole thing. Eliashib, the high priest, and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the Tower of the 100, which they dedicated, and as far as the Tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built the adjoining section, and Zakur, son of Imri, built next to them. Ooh. Number 3. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hassanah. They laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Moramoth, son of Uriah, the son of Haskoth, repaired the next section. Next to him, Meshullam, son of Berechiah, the son of Meshozabal, made repairs. And next to him, Zadok, son of Baana, also made repairs. The next section was repaired by the men of Tekoa, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to the work under their supervisors. Okay, do you get the feel of that chapter? It was extraordinary work. It was well organized, and people were enthusiastic. Everyone was pitching in. Well, most everybody. Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab plot to stop the work. So we go to Nehemiah chapter 4. When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates and the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What they are building, even a fox climbing on it would break down their wall of stones." What do you think? Ridicule, right?
Yeah.
So that was the first line of attack, is ridicule. Have you found that in your life?
First liberals.
Do you find that sometimes when people want to put you down or whatever, they ridicule you, they make fun of, or they don't take serious what you're doing? I wonder why we do that to children.
Jealousy.
You know, children are making their best attempt, but I've known people who almost like tease children at their attempt.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that? And I'm always thinking, wait, I feel like I want to take them aside and say, let me tell you about child, rearing.
Yeah.
Let me tell you about, how you teach children.
Yeah.
You don't ridicule children, right? You
Encourage
teach them. And if they don't do it correctly, even if they purposely do something wrong, you don't ridicule them. You correct them.
Yeah.
Correction is different than ridicule, isn't it? We've all been corrected, and some of us need to be corrected more than others. We need to be corrected, right?
Yeah.
But we don't have to be ridiculed or put down or belittled. And it's funny, I think we in our age group, I feel like we get this,
Yeah.
but I see some young parents that have yet to learn
Yeah.
that lesson.
Yeah.
Some of us, as we've gotten older, we look back and say, why was I so sharp-tongued? Why did I, do that? And we regret the things that we said. And when you see a parent doing that, you feel like saying, hey, let me tell you what happened to you.
Yeah.
we learn, don't we? We learn better. But so that's what they're doing. They're trying to attack them by ridiculing them. So Nehemiah tells his own story as a first-person narrative throughout the book. So, but here he makes the first of his many asides, casting his eyes to heaven as he speaks. So he most of the time he's saying, I did this, I did that, blah, blah, blah. And then here in chapter 4, verse 4, he kind of turns, and this time he's letting us know his thoughts of what he's asking God. He says, hear us, our God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in a land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. So what was his response to the derision or the taunting? He talked to God. That might be a good idea for us.
Right?
Maybe we could do that sometime. Instead of getting angry with people and saying things we shouldn't say and then being sorry later that we said it, we could bite our tongue and speak to God and talk it out with him first before we say something. That would be hard. So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. So he let it be in God's lap. Do you see that? He let that be in God's lap, and he turned back to the work, not getting dissuaded, not getting out of turn with what he had in mind to do. Verse 7, but when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's walls had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. So they're going to attack. What do you think Nehemiah will do?
Pray.
But we prayed, not only Nehemiah,
We,
whoever we is,
Yep.
we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. So they did pray and they took action.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them and will kill them and put an end to the work. Not good. Not good, right? So they're grumbling, complaining, they're getting tired and they're discouraged. Will they give up? Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. Why by families?
To fight better.
You'll fight better. You'll fight more earnestly because
family.
you're with your family.
Yep.
Your family's there.
Yep.
After I looked things over, see, he's telling you what he did. He looked things over, which is what he did with the gates, right, the walls. He walked around himself. I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, which is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes.
Yes.
When our enemies heard that we are aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to our own work. Notice how Nehemiah says that God had frustrated it. So next he rallies the people and then he takes action. Don't mess with Nehemiah. He knows exactly what to do. He arms his people so they can fight. From that day on, half of the men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. And each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. But the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. Why would he stay with them? Read the next part. Then I said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, the work is extensive and spread out, and we are widely separated from each other along the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there. God will fight for us. So half of the people worked and half guarded, and the trumpeters were established to let people know if they needed to gather together to fight. So working sunrise to sunset, armed and ready to fight. How exhausting do you think that was?
Yeah.
So we continued the work with half the men holding spears from the first light of dawn till the stars came out. At that time I also said to the people, have every man and his helper stay inside Jerusalem at night, so they can serve us as guards by night and as workers by day. Neither I, nor my brothers, nor my men, nor the guards with me took off our clothes. Each had his weapon, even when he went for water. So no matter what, you were all dressed, prepared to go, do what you needed to do. They slept in shifts, half guarded, half worked. Those who lived outside Jerusalem stayed inside so that they could do it more. According to Josephus, you know why we don't have a book of Josephus? Because he was a historian, and he wasn't a very good historian. There were many things we've proven that he said were wrong.
Yeah, he was saying about the guards staying fully dressed and everything. It hasn't changed.
Hasn't changed at all.
When I
Huh?
was in the service, yeah, you slept with your weapon.
Yeah,
You didn't have your boots on. It's all about the only thing you really took off.
yeah. It'd be at the ready.
When you're out in the field, yeah, you're ready to go at any time.
That's good. So whenever you hear them say, well, in Josephus we see this or that, you just have to know the reason they do that. It is not like a very trusted historian. He told some history, and some of the history he told people go, that wasn't quite right. So here's what he wrote, though. It's interesting to just hear it from another angle. Nehemiah himself made the rounds of the city by night, never tiring, either through work or lack of food and sleep, neither of which he took for pleasure but as a necessity. It's just interesting to know that other historians were recording the work that was being done. It's bad enough when outside opposition heats up, but it's another when your own people start to make profit or take advantage of the people that are working. You want to see Nehemiah get hot under the collar? Now, chapter 5. Now the men and their wives raised a great outcry against their fellow Jews. Their fellow Jews. Some were saying, we and our sons and daughters are numerous. In order for us to eat and stay alive, we must get grain. Others were saying, we are mortgaging our fields, our vineyards, and our homes to get grain during the famine. Why is there a famine? What are they busy with? They're working on the wall.
They're building.
So they're not taking care of their crops. They're not doing their normal stuff that would make them food. And so they're saying, this is getting too long. This isn't working. We need some, we can't feed our families. And in fact, some of them, it says, were mortgaging their fields and vineyards and homes to get grain. Verse 4, still others were saying, we have had to borrow money to pay the king's tax on our fields and vineyards. Although we are of the same flesh and blood as our fellow Jews, and though our children are as good as theirs, yet we have to subject our sons and daughters to slavery. In other words, they couldn't pay the tax to the king on the fields that they were growing. Some of our daughters have already been enslaved, but we are powerless because our fields and our vineyards belong to others. The bad thing about this is it's not only that the people who are not Jewish, it's also the Jewish elite who are making loans to fellow Jews and charging interest. High interest. How high is the interest supposed to be that you charge between Jew?
Nothing.
Nothing. It is against the law in Deuteronomy. It says, I'll give you the thing, but they were not allowed to charge interest to fellow Jews. That's in Deuteronomy 23:20. A Jew cannot charge a Jew interest. So here's Nehemiah working hard. Everybody's working hard, and now he's got this problem, which seems like a pretty severe problem, where people are actually having to close off their fields because they're losing them because they can't pay the taxes on them, and they have no food to eat because the fields are not being. Those seem like pretty severe problems. That's not a small problem, right? Mm-hmm. When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind. You know what I would have done? What are you doing? But Nehemiah is smarter than I am. He stops and prays, he stops and thinks, he stops and listens before he acts. But when he acts well, doesn't he? Yeah, he does better than me. When I heard their outcry and these charges, I was very angry. I pondered them in my mind and then accused the nobles and officials. I told them, "You are charging your own people interest." So I called together a large meeting to deal with them and said, "As far as possible, we have brought back our fellow Jews who were sold. We have bought back our fellow Jews who were sold to the Gentiles. Now you are selling your own people, only for them to be sold back to us." They kept quiet because they could find nothing to say.
They knew they were wrong.
So I continued, "What you are doing is not right. Shouldn't you walk in the fear of our God to avoid the reproach of our Gentile enemies? I and my brothers and my men are also lending the people money and grain, but let us start charging interest." In other words, he was lending people money and grain as lending it. But he says, "But I'm not charging interest." You can't charge interest. It's one thing to lend it to them, saying that someday they'll pay you back, but you don't charge interest. Verse 11, "Give back to them immediately their fields, vineyards, olive groves, and houses, and also the interest you are charging them. 1% of the money, grain, new wine, and olive oil." So he and others were lending but not charging interest. And now what he's saying, give it all back. No foreclosure, no interest, no nothing. Give it back. We learn that Nehemiah, his relatives, and his attendants have also lent money to workers, but on a very different terms. Nehemiah includes himself among the lenders, however, recognizing that what they are doing is wrong. Nehemiah demands that any interest charge and loans be returned, that mortgage property be released. It is time the usury ends. A time of national crisis and its resulting poverty calls for gifts, not loans. Notice how Nehemiah's pronouns shift from "what you are doing is not good," shift to "should you not conduct yourselves out of fear of God," to "myself. Let us put an end to this misery." So he puts himself in that place. Now, does that help in convincing people to do the right thing?
Yeah.
When they see the leadership admits, I shouldn't even be doing what I'm doing. I too need to change what I'm doing. Let's have a different thinking about this. I'm not going to loan you. I'm going to give you this. And you and I, we're going to build this wall because that's the priority to get this wall built. There's not going to be, certainly not interest. That's against the law. But Jew to Jew, we're trying to do this thing. We can just give what we need to give.
And they don't have to wait, isn't it the year of the Jubilee where the property and stuff is to return, so they don't have to wait for that?
Right, and you know that the other thing, they have not been celebrating the festivals. They've really been bad about that, and we saw that with Ezra when he read the law to them. And we haven't gotten to chapter 8 of Nehemiah, which is what we read in Ezra. I think it's 7 or 8. So my question, Eve, is was this all going on before Ezra actually had the big revival at in the temple, or was this after? Or I don't know. I'm not sure about the timing of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of curious. Verse 12, "We will give it back," they said, "and we will not demand anything more from them. We will do as you say." Then I summoned the priests and made the nobles and officials take an oath to do what they had promised. I also shook out the folds of my robe and said, "In this way may God shake out of your house and possessions anyone who does not keep his promise. So may such a person be shaken out and emptied." Have you ever, when I was a kid, my grandma always wore an apron, and it was always she wore an apron. And when we had a problem, we would run and grab her, and we'd be in the folds of her apron. Have you ever felt that? That sense of that's where I feel like that's what he's saying here. In this way, may God shake out your house and possession where they don't keep his promise. It'd be like my grandma saying, "You let go of my apron. You don't belong here, right? Get off of this." She would never do that. That was my grandma's apron. I knew what that was for. That was for me to grab a hold of and snuggle into, right? At this, the whole assembly said, "Amen," and praised the Lord. And the people did as they had promised. Moreover, from the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when I was appointed to be their governor in the land of Judah, until this 32nd year, so that's 12 years, neither I nor my brothers ate the food allotted to the governor. But the earlier governors, those preceding me, placed a heavy burden on the people and took 40 shekels of silver from them in addition to food and wine. Their assistants also lorded it over the people. But out of reverence for God, I did not act like that. Instead, I devoted myself to the work on this wall. All my men were assembled there for the work. We did not acquire any land. So the previous leadership imposed a tax on the people to pay for the food and wine of the workers. But Nehemiah is covering the whole cost of his workers and his family, his people. Furthermore, 150 Jews and officials ate at my table, as well as those who came to us from the surrounding nations. So if you didn't have a meal, where'd you go? You went to his table because he would feed you. Each day, 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, and some poultry were prepared for me, and every 10 days an abundant supply of wine of all kinds. In spite of all this, I never demanded the food allotted to the governor, because the demands were heavy on these people. In other words, he had the right to gather food from them and expect them to pay for it. But he was not using that his right as a governor to tax them.
Steak and lobster.
Yeah. Remember me with favor, my God, for all I have done for these people. So, a man of prayer. So you might say, whatever happened to Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab? And this is going to be your slide, my
Are
friend.
they still fighting?
When word came to Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies that I had rebuilt the wall, and not a gap was left in it, though up to that time I had not set the doors and the gates, Sanballat and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of... Oh no. But they were scheming to harm me, so I sent messengers to them with this reply. I am carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you? 4 times they sent me the same message, and each time I gave them the same answer. Oh no, I'm not going there. Oh, I think that's so funny that the name of that town is Oh No. It's a village, it's about 35 miles northwest of Jerusalem, about a day's journey, but it goes through the Samaritan territory. There's Jerusalem, and you can see Ono's on the plains of Ono, Keshmish. No, Shephirim. It's an Arab village in the land of Oh No. Chapter 6, verse 5. Then the 5th time, Sanballat sent his aide to me with the same message, and in his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written. Now, why is it important to know the 4 were sealed, but this was unsealed? That means everybody's reading it along the way.
Yes.
That you don't have a seal that's keeping it safe. Everybody's like, oh, what is he sending? What's the message he's sending? And the rumors go out. So let's see what the rumors were. It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says it is true. Geshem the Arab, is that the guy?
Yep.
Says it's true. That you and the Jews are plotting to revolt, and therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king. And I have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. This is a king in Judah. Now this report will go back to the king, so come, let us meet together.
Set 'em up.
They're just trying to set him up. So what do you think Nehemiah's response is going to be? You're fortifying the city so you can be king, is the charge. They're saying you just want to be king and you're fortifying the city so you can be king, so we're going to let the other king know. Verse 8, I sent him this reply. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You were just making up out of your own head. They were all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will be too weak for the work and will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands.
Yeah.
One day I went to the house of Shemaiah, son of Deliah, the son of Mehetabel, who was shut in at his home. He said, let us meet in the house of God inside the temple, and let us close the temple doors because men are coming to kill you. By night they are coming to kill you. Have you ever seen The Godfather? Mm-hmm. The one who seems to be the friend is actually luring you in. Let's see what Nehemiah says. But I said, should a man like me run away? Or should someone like me go into the temple to save his life? I will not go. I realized that God had not sent him, but that he had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. He had been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. Remember Tobiah and Sanballat, my God, because of what they have done. Remember also the prophet Noadiah and how she and the rest of the prophets have been trying to intimidate me. So the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. 52 days.
Didn't he set a timeline before that?
Did you notice the prophetess? There were many female prophets. They would be called a prophetess. This one happens to be a evil lady, Noadiah. There were actual prophetesses that were from God, that brought God's word. Miriam, Deborah, Huldah, and there was an evil prophetess who brought magic and witchcraft that was mentioned in Ezekiel. So there are good and bad prophets and prophetesses, and this mentions one prophetess. So in spite of the opposition led by Sanballat, Tobiah, and Geshem the Arab, Nehemiah finishes the walls of Jerusalem, but efforts to discredit Nehemiah continue. Verse 16, when all our enemies had heard about this, all the surrounding nations were afraid and lost their self-confidence because they realized that this work had been done with the help of our God. Also in those days, the nobles of Judah were sending many letters to Tobiah, and replies from Tobiah kept coming to them. For many in Judah were under oath to him, since he was son-in-law to Shechaniah, son of Era, and his son Jehohanan had married the daughter of Meshullam, son of Berechiah. Moreover, they kept reporting to me his good deeds, and then telling him what I said. And Tobiah sent letters to intimidate me. So the nobles, the wealthy elite, who had all given back their interest, were talking to Tobiah and spreading rumors and gossips about Nehemiah and what he's trying to do to intimidate him. So he crammed chapters 2 through 6 happened in 52 days. Josephus says that it lasted 2 years and 4 months. I'm more likely to believe the scripture. Nehemiah's wall has been excavated. There is a portion that was excavated. And that's kind of to show where it was excavated, just that small portion we saw on the other map. But what you want to really look at is look in the picture. Look at the top right. Do you see a lady? She's wearing a white blouse and blue jeans. Look how big that wall is.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not like a wall. It's a big wall.
He built it in how many days? 52.
The thickness made it such that if you tried to batter it down, all that would happen is the stones would get tighter. And that's the idea, to make them so tight and thick that when you try to ram it, it just tightens up. And remember Rahab's house?
In the wall.
On the wall of Jericho? They were big enough, the walls would be big enough for travel, like for a road or for a house to be on. So you got to figure if Rahab had a house on the wall, that wall probably was also thick enough to have a path or a road beside it, right? On top of the wall. So this is big. It's not a small thing that he accomplished.
Wow.
With rocks and with people. Of course, they had the rocks that were fallen from the wall, so it wasn't like they had to go search out and bring the rocks as much as it was just putting them up in place. What do you think about Galatians 6? I think this describes Nehemiah. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers. Doesn't that fit?
Yes.
He just stays with it, doesn't he? He doesn't get distracted away from doing what he's doing. He's doing the right thing, the good thing. He sticks with it. He makes a way to make it happen. We sometimes get tired. Sometimes we get criticized and we just give up because somebody criticized us. What counters criticism?
Encouragement.
What did Nehemiah just prayed? and then said, I'm not doing that. I'm going this way. I'm going to stay with it. So in order to stay with it, he had to have a lot of trust that God was going to make it happen.
Right.
God was going to work it out. Otherwise, you can't stay with it because the things that come against you just are too big. They're too hard. Don't go to the land of oh no. Philippians 4. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable. If anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about all the trouble of this person and that person said this, did you see the nerve of that person to send that open letter, right? Instead of getting all mad about how things are coming against you. We need to do this. We need to put our mind on these things. Think about such things. That's what we need to be thinking about. We need to do what we need to do about the trouble and then let God take care of it. What about Matthew 19:26? Now this is talking about salvation actually, but I think it applies more broadly. With man this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. With man this is impossible, but not with God. All things are possible with God. True?
Yes.
Is there something you
Yes.
think God can't do? Galatians, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who belong to the family of believers. What do you think? I think Nehemiah is a pretty good example of how to get something done. You just got to keep going with it. I can tell you when we do the Christmas choir,
Oh.
we sound terrible at the beginning. It's hard to believe we'll ever come to a point where it sounds good at the first. And it's hard. Fortunately, we have the machine that plays the voices of the professionals so you could hear that voice, and that really helps. But you know, by the time we just keep practicing every week, keep practicing. By the time we get to the time of the Christmas program, we sound like a choir. So,
Perseverance.
yeah, so we just have to stay with what we know is good and right and keep doing the work, and God will provide the result. We can trust Him. I mean, if there's anybody you can trust, it's Him, right? Okay, so Nehemiah and the people had finished the work building the wall, even with armed guards and weapons at the ready, and Nehemiah also had forced the loans and interest to be paid back. This made some enemies for him. Chapter 7. After the wall had been rebuilt and had set the doors in place, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the Levites were appointed. I put in charge of Jerusalem my brother Hananiah, along with Hananiah, the commander of the citadel, because he was a man of integrity and feared God more than most people do. Now see, I'm wondering if he's appointing Levites. Remember when Ezra arrived, not all the Levites were Levites.
Right.
And he had to do some cleaning up. I'm wondering if this was the beginning of that. Like if he said, well, who's the Levite? You guys need to be taking care of the temple, but the temple still needed to be worked on. You know, he's been working on the walls. I'm curious about that. This is the one place I'm just wondering if this is where this intersects.
Doesn't give
I
a
said to them,
timeline.
the gates of Jerusalem are not to be opened until the sun is hot. While the gatekeepers are still on duty, have them shut the doors and bar them. Also appoint residents of Jerusalem as guards, some of their posts and some near their own houses. The other thing that makes sense to me about this is when Ezra came, remember he brought all kinds of gold and silver and stuff to put in the temple? And I'm thinking, I wonder if that was important to have the wall and the gates functional before you bring all that stuff that could be booty for someone to steal. So I'm kind of just thinking about the timing of it. Now the city was large and spacious, but there were few people in it, and the houses had not yet been rebuilt. It seems like when Ezra gets there, there's people there. So my God put it in my heart to assemble the nobles, the officials, and the common people for registration by families. I found the genealogical record of those who had been the first to return. This is what I found written there. These are the people of the province who came up from the captivity of the exiles from Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, had taken captive. They returned to Jerusalem and Judah, each to his own town, in company with Zerubbabel, Joshua, Nehemiah, Azariah, Ramai, Mordecai, all those names. The list of the men of Israel goes to verse 64. And you are welcome to read that whole list. And you can pronounce the names any way you want. I have a chart, though, similar to the chart we had when we read in Ezra. This total counted number is 31,089. When you get to the end where they add some other people, it's 42,360. There's lots of discrepancies because the women were unspecified, and children. You didn't know the count of the women, and the children were not clear. So, and also sometimes they only included the members of the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. Because remember the southern and northern the kingdoms that got done and the tribes that went to the north. So Benjamin and Judah were on that southern side. So a lot of times they only counted the people from Judah. A lot of those that had gone up north were all mixed in. You know, that's where later it becomes the Samaritans and all, because it's a lot of mixed nationality, not really Jewish. So even the Jews that we have are not quite there either. They were intermarrying, which we saw with Ezra, and that's a part of that whole thing. You know, you've got these idol worship. What are you doing? So it kind of seems to me that this all happens, and then we get to the cleanup that Ezra does. That's what it seems like to me. Verse 63, and from the priests, the descendants of Hobabiah, Hakaz, and Barzillai, a man who had married a daughter of Barzillai the Gileadite and was called by that name. These searched for their family records, but they could not find them, and so were excluded from the priesthood as unclean. Now remember in Ezra, that's what one of the first things that he did. So the governor, therefore, ordered them not to eat any of the most sacred food until there should be a priest ministering with the Urim and Thummim. Remember, that was how they would make decisions. So they had to have a priest that had that, because then that would be the way God. Their idea was that the Urim and the Thummim was how God would say what the answer was. So do we allow this person to be a Levite or not? You could do that and God would tell you.
Yeah.
So 66 to 72, verses 66 to 72, they list at the number of people and families that contributed to the work, which you might really enjoy reading sometime. So now we read Nehemiah 8 already. Ezra and Nehemiah were viewed as a single unified work. We already talked about this. I don't want to say this over again. So we learned in Nehemiah 6 that the wall was finished on the 25th day of Elul on the Hebrew calendar. Elul is the 6th lunar month of the year, which consists of 29 days during August, September on our Gregorian calendar. Here in Nehemiah 8 verse 2, we read that Ezra began to read the book of the law on the first day of the 7th lunar month. Thus, in Nehemiah, Ezra begins reading the book of the law to the people less than a week after Nehemiah completes the wall. If that's the case, workers were building the platform for Ezra while they were working on the wall. Work on the wall was still going on. Nehemiah really had a brutal deadline. Nehemiah 7 verse 73, the priests, the Levites, the gatekeepers, the musicians, and the temple servants, along with certain of the people and the rest of the Israelites, settled in their own towns. So that would make sense that if they'd settled in their own towns, now they could come to begin this work that Ezra is going to do with them. And that starts being told in Nehemiah chapter 8, which we read. All the people came together as one in the square before the water gate. They told Ezra, the teacher of the law, to bring out the book of the law of Moses, which the Lord had commanded for Israel. Can you start to see how this is blending? So on the first day of the 7th month, Ezra the priest brought out the law before the assembly, which was made up of men and women and all who were able to understand. He read it aloud from daybreak till noon as he faced the square before the water gate in the presence of the men, women, and others who could understand. And all the people listened attentively to the book of the law. Ezra, the teacher of the law, stood on a high wooden platform built for the occasion, and it tells the names of the people who built it. And then Ezra opened the book. All the people could see him because he was standing above them, and he opened it. The people all stood up. Ezra praised the Lord, the great God, and all the people lifted their hands and responded, Amen, amen. Then they bowed down and worshiped the Lord with their faces to the ground. The Levites, Jeshua, Bani, Sherebim, blah, 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 instructed the people in the law while the people were standing there. They read from the book of the law, making it clear and giving the meaning so that the people understood what was being read. Verse 9. Then Nehemiah, the governor, Ezra, the priest and teacher of the law, and the Levites who were instructing the people said to them, get it?
Yeah, they're all together talking to the people.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So what the scholars don't know is exactly when things fell into place. We can't really piece it. We're given certain times, but not all the times. So somehow it looks like Nehemiah might have been there first, and then Ezra came in. But I don't know. It seems it's all kind of juggled up. It's hard to tell. So then Nehemiah the governor, Ezra the priest, the teacher of the law, and the Levites who were instructing the people said to them, "This day is holy to the Lord your God. Do not mourn or weep." For all the people had been weeping as they listened to the words of the law. Why were they weeping?
Because they had gone against the law. They sinned.
They have been all over the place.
Yeah.
Some of them have had the ability to stay in touch with their Jewish religion, and others have had nothing. And some of them weren't alive when their parents were taken into captivity. A lot of these are the children of the families.
Yeah.
So what they knew about the word would have been really, and then to hear the words of the law and hear what it is they should have been doing, that would be it was just flabbergasting to them to hear it. And we go on. We read through Nehemiah 8 before. So the people went out and brought back branches and built it. Remember, he talked about the Feast of the Booths and described to them that they hadn't been celebrating all their Jewish festivals. And so he explained about the Feast of the Booths and what they were supposed to do. And remember, they went and did it. They celebrated the festival for 7 days, and on the 8th day, they had their big assembly. And then in chapter 9, on the 24th day of the same month, the Israelites gathered together, fasting and wearing sackcloth and putting dust on their heads. Those of Israelite descent had separated themselves from all foreigners. Now, remember, that was about the people who had married wives of that had idols and were worshiping other gods. So, could you become Jewish? Yes. The law provided for how you could become Jewish. So why would there be a need to separate the mothers or the wives?
Because they didn't want to become.
Right. That's right. They did not want to give up their idols. And the problem with that from God's point of view is those are the people who are teaching the children. So if you have a wife who's believing in a different religion than you, she's the one spending the time with the children, and you're here's from God's point of view, here's his own people raising idol worshipers. Problem, right? So verse 2, those of Israelite descent had separated themselves from all foreigners. They stood in their places and confessed their sins and the sins of their ancestors. They stood where they were and read from the book of the law of the Lord their God for a quarter of the day, and spent another quarter in confession and in worshiping the Lord their God. Standing on the stairs of the Levites were Jeshua, Beni, Kadmiel, Shebna, Buni, Sherebiah, Bani, and Kanani. They cried out with loud voices to the Lord their God, and the Levites, Jeshua, Kadmai, Bani, Meshua, said, "Stand up and praise the Lord your God, who is from everlasting to everlasting." So now what happens is like a choir. It's like there's two groups of people, and one would say one thing and the other would reply the other. And this has this, the way it's written is like these choirs coming in at one another. Would have been really prickly, skin prickly. You would have got your little goosebumps from hearing the way that they carried this out. Blessed be your glorious name, and may be exalted above all blessing and praise. You alone are the Lord. You made the heavens, even the highest heavens, and all their starry hosts, the earth and all that is on it, the seas and all that is in them. You give life to everything, and the multitudes of heaven worship you. You are the Lord God who chose Abraham and brought him out of the Ur of the Chaldeans and named him Abraham. You found his heart faithful to you. What are they doing here?
Praising God.
They're going all the way back to the beginning of when God made them a people. And they're now in this whole chapter, they're going to rehearse the history of the Jews. Even I and a few others are in a Bible thing where we're reading a year in the Bible. And we've been going through like the Old Testament stuff. And at this time we're reading in Joshua, where the people were given the law. and told how to worship and what to do. And someone said, why does this have to keep being repeated?
To keep reminding them, they keep forgetting.
We're pretty hard-headed.
Well, they died and their children grew up.
Yeah.
And then it's their children's children. Now can you even think of one story that's 2 generations old?
Nope.
Many people cannot. I've been working hard to remember some of them. I'm writing some of them down, the things that I remember, because they're lost. Those things are lost in time. So they wrote it down, right? God had Moses write it down. So what did they have to do during Joshua's time and into the future? They had to reread that. They had to read it out to the people. They had to go over it again and again so that you catch every generation. Otherwise, it just dies with the generation. So here you're going to see this long summary. You are the Lord your God. You chose Abram, brought him out of Ur of Chaldeans, and named him Abraham. You found his heart faithful to you, and you made a covenant with him to give it to his descendants in the land of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Jebusites, and Girgasites. You have kept your promise because you are righteous. You saw the suffering of our ancestors in Egypt. You heard our cry over the Red Sea. Down to verse 12. By day you led them with a pillar of cloud, and by night with a pillar of fire to give them light on the way they were to take. Verse 13. You came down on Mount Sinai. You spoke to them from heaven. Verse 15. In their hunger you gave them bread from heaven. In their thirst you brought them water from the rock. Verse 16. But they, our ancestors, became arrogant and stiff-necked, and they did not obey your commands. They refused to listen and failed to remember the miracles you performed among them. Go on to verse 18. Even when they cast for themselves an image of a calf and said, this is your God who brought you out of Egypt, or when they committed awful blasphemies. Verse 19. Because of your great compassion, you did not abandon them in the wilderness. That would have been my choice. I think if I were God, after all of that mess, I would have just said, I need to start over with somebody else. Let me look for somebody more cooperative. Verse 21, for 40 years you sustained them in the wilderness. They lacked nothing. Their clothes did not wear out, nor did their feet become swollen. Verse 22, you gave them kingdoms and nations, allotting to them even the remotest frontiers. They took over the country of, skip on down, verse 25. They captured fortified cities and fertile land. They took possession of houses filled with all kinds of good things, wells already dug, vineyards, olive groves, and fruit trees in abundance. They ate to the full and were well nourished. They reveled in your great goodness. Verse 28. But they were disobedient and rebelled against you. Have we heard that before? They turned their backs on your law. They killed your prophets who had warned them in order to turn them back to you. They committed awful blasphemies. So you delivered them into the hands of their enemies who oppressed them. On to verse 28. But as soon as they were at rest, they again did what was evil in your sight. Then you abandoned them to the hand of their enemies so that they ruled over them. And when they cried out to you again, you heard from heaven, and in your compassion you delivered them time after time. You warned them in order to turn them back to your law, but they became arrogant and disobeyed your commands. Verse 31. But in your great mercy you did not put an end to them or abandon them, for you are a gracious and merciful God. Verse 32, now therefore our God, the great God, mighty and awesome, who keeps his covenant of love. I mean, from the time of Abraham, he has kept his covenant of love through all of these adventures. Do not let all this hardship seem trifling in your eyes, the hardship that has come on us, on our kings and leaders, on our priests and prophets, on our ancestors and all your people, from the days of the kings of Assyria until today. In all that has happened to us, you have remained righteous. You have acted faithfully while we acted wickedly. Our kings, our leaders, our priests, and our ancestors did not follow your law. They did not pay attention to your commands or the statutes you warned them to keep, even while they were in their kingdom, enjoying your great goodness to them in the spacious and fertile land you gave them. They did not serve you or turn their evil ways. But see, we have slaves today, slaves in the land you gave our ancestors, so they could eat its fruit and other good things it produces. Because of our sins, its abundant harvest goes to the kings you have placed over us. They rule over our bodies and our cattle as they please. We are in great distress, the agreement of the people. So in view of all this, We are making a binding agreement, putting it in writing, and our leaders, our Levites, and our priests are affixing their seals to it. So they've related the whole history, obedience, disobedience, what God's faithfulness has been, and the ending message is, remember all that God has done for you, and then they sign their names all the way to the bottom of that chapter. Just keep on reading, you can read all their names of who signed. There were priests, there were Levites, there were leaders of the people. All the people, they could sign their names saying, this is what we know and what we are going to do now. We recognize who we are. So he linked the people from creation to now, from the beginning of the creation of the nation and the signing of this document, committing themselves to work God has set before them. We will not neglect the house of God, was what their statement was. So what do you think? Nehemiah, good guy, bad guy, in the middle.
Good guy.
He seems like a really good guy. Yeah. Ezra, introvert. Nehemiah, extrovert. Would you say?
Yeah.
Ezra did his part too. He
Yes.
did the part in the temple in that area, but he did it in a different manner than what Nehemiah did. Nothing wrong with being different. Yes.
I find it interesting, you read the verse much earlier when the enemies threatened him with their letters, and then he finally went to that guy's house, the evil prophet, said, oh, go hide in the temple. So there must have been a temple for him to go hide in, or at least partially built. Maybe it wasn't safe because they could hide and get him, but there had to be a place that was designated that they were already working.
Yeah, there are those hints. That's true. It's a little tricky. I think the key is that we probably should not decide, because there isn't enough scholarly knowledge to actually be definitive. But we can certainly see it linking and intermingling between Ezra and Nehemiah. And by the way, the king who is over Esther is Xerxes. The king that Nehemiah worked with was Artaxerxes. And the king that Esther gets with, she's out of that same city that he was from. What was it? Susa. So there's this combination between Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther. It's happening in the same time frame that this history is happening together.
So this all comes down to